Great. This is September 18th, 2017. We're here for the Policy Committee meeting. We have all of our committee members here. Are there any communications or announcements?
There are none at this time.
Okay. We have some minutes from the August 28th meeting. If there are any corrections, changes, whatever, send them over to Brooke. Otherwise, those will go up for the legislative meeting in October. So next, we are going to go right into our equity policy discussion. We have had equity policy on the agenda now for the last few months. We just haven't been able to get everyone here to really chat about it. So we can go right into that. Dr. Kim had made a recommendation, like I said a few months ago, in suggesting that the district adopt an equity policy. So we have a draft or a suggestion of one. So, all right, what do you want to talk about?
I mean, basically, what I've noticed is that there's a lot of districts around the country, I should say, not in the area, that are carrying a lot of the work that we're already doing in the district, and so I thought that would really pair nicely with some of the initiatives we've already done, and actually getting ahead of the issues of equity within our district. I know we don't have as much disparity as other districts do, but I think in the policy form, it puts language in that's a little more robust than even the current policies that we have in regards to non-discrimination that are out there. The deal in particular with, I think, a philosophical approach, as well as just making sure that the district continues its stance in regards to making sure that every person, regardless, has equitable access. So this is very much a draft language. There's nothing in it. I think in terms of discussion, there's a lot that could be discussed. I sent Mrs. Brockman today an article that was from Washington State, and one of the things that they, in the article, really suggested was that each district has to really cater to its particular nuances. So there isn't a policy that you can say, well, here's a draft policy that every district can do. You've got to look at what you have within the district, and I think that's where today's discussion would be great, that we can basically say, what is it that we feel really confident that's necessary for everyone to achieve one.
We put up whatever we need to for students to achieve well. I believe that stated pretty clearly, I guess in the first two paragraphs anyway, that our purpose is for every student to have access and opportunities, no matter whether race, gender. And I think it's important to say that. I think it's important to see that. And I would agree with you in terms of having a policy that people can actually point to.
Can this PSBA offer guidance on what it should look like?
Well, there's a PSBA draft, that's policy 103. It's a policy that you have. Now that policy is non-discrimination in school and classroom practices. It's not a one-to-one match with this, but there's substantial overlap. So maybe, this could take the place of 103. You wouldn't want to have this and 103. You need to somehow reconcile them, because otherwise people wouldn't know what the policy was. So you just need to take existing 103 and this or other sources and sort of combine them. And I think certainly you can change the name of 103, you can call 103 whatever you want. But it's, you can't, my other point is the answer to your question is yes. And it looks a lot like what you have as policy 103. So you might want to take the best of both and sort of smush them together.
Yeah, great.
Hey, Robert, the ensuring educational and racial equity, is there a better word than racial? Because it really is more than just racial.
Or what are we talking about?
I wouldn't use the word racial.
Yeah, I mean, we can
Just in terms of the title.
Yeah.
The bulk of the policy, as I'm looking at it, focuses on actively addressing discrimination, where this document seems to be more setting an expectation for the district. So I could see part of this going into 103. Would we then want to keep that secondary focus on ensuring non-discrimination? And I don't know if I'm making myself clear here. I see 103 as stating an expectation, then skewing to non-discrimination, where do we want to expand the equity language at the beginning of 103? Is that what we're looking at doing? Because there's more here than just, and I don't want to say just, but complaints of discrimination.
Yeah, so when I was reviewing 103 and 104, I think are the two, right, that are there.
104 is contracts,
Sure.
right?
But the reason why I think this policy at least fits into its place, and it could be maybe perhaps in place of 103 and 104. 103 and 104 seem to deal with just, I mean, to Dr. Will, your point, I think it deals with just practices, right? So the district will have these particular practices set in place.
It's not philosophy.
Yeah, I think this policy really does present a vision and a philosophy of the district to make sure that we're trying to get really in particular ahead of just saying that what we've said in regards to equitable access is that we're going to stick with that. And again, I think given the fact that we've been doing a lot of these efforts as of late, I think it just reinforces what we've established, and it will continue on as we continue as a district in terms of what we've been seeking to achieve.
When I read this, my understanding was this applies really to students.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's really 103. 104
I think
is applies to employees and third parties. So this is really and all policies are statements of philosophy. And that's what a policy is. So I think, like I said, so it's some blending of this with 103 or, like I said, or other sources.
I see in this document, third paragraph down, forced to overcome a cultural barrier. That seems, in my mind, policy-oriented. The remainder seems more like an AR type of thing. Does that make sense? An AR focus?
Yeah.
After that point?
I think that, yeah, I agree that I think some of the very specifics about practices, that seems like what we generally keep in our administrative.
And we don't have an AR for 103.
We don't, no.
No, you have a cross-reference to a complaint procedure.
Right, we just have the document.
Which also we need to have that as well.
Mm-hmm.
You guys want any complaints?
Would it be broader? Because I'm not sure what that complaint process or that form is. I don't know if it covers everything that's being specified in this.
Well, you can take a look at it. Brooks, if you
We'll cover everything that we're talking about.
you scroll down to the
It is wide-ranging.
there it is.
One thing we don't have on this date.
As of.
When we update, we need to get that done.
Okay.
Very deep, other categories.
So, what do
But
we...
this form is, I feel like I've been discriminated against, and I'm pursuing a complaint.
Yeah,
right.
What this is talking about is broader than that. It's not only are we going to make sure that people are discriminated against, it's going to be the philosophy to overarching umbrella of the school district that we're going to take affirmative steps to ensure equity, whether it's not coming at it from the non-discriminatory, but just coming at it from the raising
Right.
all facing everybody.
Right, and like discrimination is like, can be a part of, it's a smaller part, it's the broader reach is what we're saying. It's not just, of course we can't discriminate, we shouldn't be discriminating, of course that, but we're actually trying to take a step beyond that.
Well, that, and I think it's also talking about proactive efforts. And so when we're talking about, let's say, the restructuring, in some ways we looked at the data and then we follow a corrective action accordingly. This is saying we're proactively looking at that data to make sure that those adjustments are being made to ensure that all of our students have equitable access.
Right.
Because part of it has that language in terms of review and analysis and then looking at correction in terms of making sure that those things are in place. So I think it's getting ahead of the issues that we know. And you know, one of the things I did recently was interview someone in regards to the history district, and it was just a really quick snippet was, person said, oh, in the 1970s when we had all these race issues, it was interesting because basically we realized we have a race issue within Upper Dublin. And it was interesting hearing that statement and then thinking 50 years later, we have snippets or aspects in which we can still deal with that. So basically I think this is it goes beyond race, Dr. Levinowitz, but I do think it's basically saying is how do we try to get ahead of this issue that we know has been something that plays out. I've talked about in a lot of districts in terms of saying that we're looking ahead of the issue before it comes down. If I could suggest just maybe ensuring educational equity would be the title, by the way, just getting very rich.
Or you can put excellence in there somewhere.
I know we could do that. Did nicely with that. The presentation.
Right.
So we would have to set up policies or at least a process so that we can implement all these things.
Yeah.
So it would be a statistical review, for example, of disciplinary procedures or processes.
Well, that would be part of the AR.
One of the things, yes.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
That was just an example.
Some of it, workforce equity, to reflect the diversity of our student body. A fourth of our employees would have to represent some minority group. That's 140 employees. Are we really honestly going to get there? I don't want to set us up for it.
No, I don't think so, but I think that it's the idea of actively working, and I think that it's, I mean, and which I think that we have done things like that. We have gone out to fairs. I mean, I was just reading something the other day that, less than 2% of all teachers are African American men.
In Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
men, yes.
Men.
4
Right.
total certificate holders.
Right, I mean, it's terrible. So it's not that we're going to be able to take all 4 of them and get them in our school district, but it's just, I think it's being aware of that and that's, we're pursuing people that will be reflective of what our community is. With the understanding is that we want to take the best candidate, but we're considering all those factors. We're going to try to actively recruit the best candidates that also happen to be, minorities or reflective of our community in which way.
So what do you want to do next? How do you want to move forward?
Yeah, so I think that blending 103 with portions of this or combining the two in certain ways, I think is the way to, I think that's my suggested way to proceed. And at the same time, moving some of this information, especially the back page, I would say, into an administrative regulation, and then it's going to be also building out from there, like the process of how we're going to make sure, we're doing an analysis. Because, I mean, some of this is, I think, there's some things that are really specific, and yet things some general in here, so it's giving us, we want to have leeway, but at the same time, we need to have a measure for accountability to make sure that we are doing this, so there is some type of actual process laid out. Does that make sense to you?
Do you want Michelle and me to take a swipe at it?
I mean, we could run it by the administration group, is that what you're looking, or is this something that would be more broadly looked at by the excellence through equity subgroups and that whole umbrella of folks?
I would give them something after we've already drafted it,
Yeah.
for them to take a look at.
Yeah, before we pass it, I would put them down later, kind of down the line, because you know how sometimes these policy meetings can go when we talk about where the comma should go. So I don't want to bog this down for, 6 more months. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, and actually, even a lot of the reading that I've done on this, one of the things that they highly stress is the fact that you do have these community partnerships. And what I had said earlier about the work that we're already doing. I mean, the consortium is an example of that, right? The restructuring is an example of that. These are all things that the district is seeking to do. And so we're simply pairing, in my opinion, a policy that mirrors our practice, right? And in some ways, also trying to get ahead of things that I think would be helpful for us as we think about the future of our district as well. So.
That's the things can always change, personnel changes and stuff like that. We want to make sure we have the right mission. When we have the right group of people together that care about this sort of thing, we can set the mission. So then when other people come in, they already know the path that we're on. So.
Right, this policy ensures that future boards know what the current board was thinking,
Right.
as they did that. I've made some notes. Again, do you want us to go ahead and take a swipe at organizing a policy on AR?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay.
Okay.
Do really well.
So-
I mean, by saying that, you're also going to combine it with the 104 or the 103.
I think it's 103. Yeah, we're blending 103. Yeah. So, yeah.
And they're not, any districts in Pennsylvania that have ones already done that we could look at. I think you already did that research and it wasn't really in the state.
Well, that policy 103 was what.
That's what it was, right.
And then I just so happened to have samples from other states because some other district was doing the same exercise you're doing. They had gotten those policies from a consultant. We've not done a systematic search for policies like this.
Okay.
So if we take 103 and put in what we think appropriate for a policy from here, then construct an AR from the rest of the document as a starting place anyway.
That'd be a good start.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Especially working with the administration.
All right, great. Okay. All right, so hopefully we'll have another discussion about equity then on the next policy committee meeting in October 30th.
You want to schedule a time for a work session?
And also on the citations, and just clicking through them, some of them go to school code and then others go to Cornell Law School. I'm not sure that's supposed to be there or not. Like when you click on the citation number 1 under policy 103, it takes you to Cornell Law School. And then you go to 2, it goes to school code. And then you go to like 5 again, swings you back to
Cornell Law School
Cornell Law
is Cornell Law School is where the United States Code is available for free
All
online.
right.
So it's okay that it's like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you look at the references that are as they're written, it's just 20. So that's just one place you can get. Yeah, this is a place where you can get free access to the U.S. Code.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Okay, so then we'll also crosswalk with all of these other references to other policies. We'll take a look at that as well. Okay.
All right. So we finally talked about that. That was good. All right. So we'll see it again in October. Next on the list, we have recognition of community sponsors. I think this came from you. Okay. I'm like, I remember. It was the high school or you? So there was. Okay.
Okay, here's the situation. The board did a lot of work on developing policy. Our fundraising naming rights run through the Dead Foundation, and we're set with that. Question came to my desk. One of our booster clubs has raised funds, specifically this is the marching band, and they have a group of sponsors, and what their request was to have a banner that they could put up, say hang on the fence during the football game, take it down after the football game. I see no problem with that. I just wanted to make sure that the understanding of the committee about policy and the naming rights, et cetera, that there's no conflict before I move forward. So I see
Is it
I'm
non-permanent thing?
non-permanent, they tie it to the fence and then take it down
When the performance is over?
when the performance, the football game is over. And it is just to thank their sponsors.
It's so, I mean, I think it's type of commercial advertising.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing it, and so they get,
People continue to sponsor them.
right, exactly. So,
So where do we fall with that?
so that's 710.
We have our naming rights policy.
Well, this would be
Yeah, commercial.
This is
Commercial advertising.
This is number 7.
So how, when they enter into these sponsorships with organizations, are they following any board policy regarding
Yeah, there's
organizations?
not a problem with that. All
Okay.
this is they just wanted to know, and you know, they asked, which is, they wanted to know if having followed everything and having these sponsors, would it be a problem if they put up a sign during a football game, during spectacular, which we missed, it was Saturday night,
Yeah.
just thanking their current sponsors and then take it down at the end of the event?
So the football team can ask the same thing. Well, anybody who's using the field, soccer.
Any booster club, yes. That's why I wanted to make sure we're clear on this.
Well, I don't know.
702.1 might be another one.
Yeah, this is commercial advertising.
This is recognition of contributions to school community, naming right now, that's,
Yeah, this isn't a name, right?
okay.
Here's the thing. The football team and the band aren't leasing the property. So it's not like they have any more entitlement to put their banners on the property than somebody, than the volleyball team or the swim team or whatever. It's just because it happens to be the venue and the time that they're playing, doesn't all this, we had the same conversation about the snack bar and fundraising and basically making sure there's equity in terms of booster clubs being allowed to raise funds. You know, the fact that the football game's going on doesn't entitle the football boosters to, like, we get to work the snack bar during football games, you know, volleyball, you can only work the snack bar during volleyball games. There has to be equity in terms of promotion of your programs. Less of an issue with respect to demand than it is with an issue with sports. If you're giving male sports teams all the great advertising opportunities, then not giving them the things to the female sports teams, you're arguably violating Title IX. So, what always starts off as a very innocent, is it okay if we put a thank you very much Fireside for your contribution to Spectacle of Sound, putting it up there that may seem very innocent, but then other groups will see it, and they're all going to want to do it, and you're not going to be able to say no, and pretty soon, you know, you're hurting cats. So that's why we have these policies on making sure everybody gets a fair crack at fundraising opportunities. So this is actually a policy that's really working here is 900 and 915. That's the policy that you really that is the conversation
Booster clubs.
we look at, because that will tell us what people have to do in order to be allowed. If it doesn't cover fundraising,
You're ready for new traffic?
For other reasons, I have really been delving into that policy a lot lately.
9:15.
Yeah. So is the feeling that this would send us down the wrong path if we were to do that, which is fine. I just want to give them a response.
And there's a way to do this legally. So don't make the decision based on, oh my God, we're going to open ourselves up to a bunch of lawsuits or something. Well, we can come up with a plan that's legal and equitable. It's quite the threshold question is, do you want to take, do you want to take on making sure booster clubs comply with this policy.
Right, and I can see the conundrum. The band often has the fence at the football field, lacrosse has a fence, soccer has a fence, baseball has a fence. Volleyball doesn't have a fence. Cheerleading has sponsors, they don't have a fence, and by that I mean an easy way to display and take it up and down. So again, do we want to go down that path? That's what I'm looking to you all for guidance.
If there was a process that we could figure out, some type of administrative regulation that we could put in place that would allow us to do that equitably, then I would say, why not?
There's a similar to policy. It's basically you say to everybody, anybody that wants to put a banner up, here's who you apply to, and we take, first come, first serve, we don't let somebody monopolize them. And you should, it should be done. Now the question is, do you want to go even further and say, and by the way, here's the price list for a banner, so that we don't have the volleyball team undercutting the football team, or vice versa.
Then I feel like we're getting into the,
We have that already. I mean, we have sponsors that have their banners.
but that's permanent.
Yeah, that's
This
permanent.
this is a different question, rather than a sponsor, this is
We have
somebody
banners on the
specific.
football field.
Specific time.
Somebody gave $500 this
District
season to ban
district.
commercial
Right.
things.
Yeah, that's commercial
That's
advertising.
commercial.
When we go out and get fire signs, spend
Right.
$5,000 for a placard to put in the gym,
Right.
that's 610. This is when our booster clubs go out, and we're gonna basically say, you could say, okay, booster clubs. Well, there are 10 places at our, on Spark Field or Cardinal Stadium that you can put something. We'll sell 10. You want to go out, everybody, first come, first serve. So if you want one of the 10, you basically have to, show us that you're generating, so much per sign, and we'll shop. You don't want to have people say, well, we sell it for $5. You want, it's not that hard. It's just basically, here's my request, and yes, did we charge it? They're paying $100 or whatever.
I don't think that we're charging, or they're charging anything, they're just recognizing.
It's
very
what
limited amount of
they
time.
do in their printed program.
Right. So they're recognizing something for a very limited amount of time, so it's not going to be a permanent fixture. I don't see why we would have to charge them anything.
Right, it's just a banner that goes up
I
and
want
goes
the
down.
Booster Club. I'm the president of the Boys Soccer Booster Club. Let's put up a Whistler Pearl sign. I'm not charging it. They're being charged for it. I mean, how do you then keep the booster clubs from just basically promoting themselves personally? And that has happened. Not
But I don't think that's what you're talking about. You're talking about.
I'm going a couple steps beyond.
Could
what
happen.
Dr. Rose talked
Well,
about.
that's why I came here, because I realized that this
Yeah, and you don't want
has nuances, and I want to make sure that we're,
You don't want it to diminish, honestly, your commercial advertising, because, why do I need to pay the $5,000 for the permanent thing,
Yeah.
when the only time people come there is really during the football game, so I'm just gonna sponsor the football game with my name on the banner, and that's gonna cost me a lot less money. It's,
I actually think it's a little different, because if you went to Spectacle, when you walked into Spectacle, the way they got around it this time was they had these large poster boards, 4 of them, and all it was all of their sponsors listed. It's in fairly small font, because it listed all their sponsors. So when people were walking in,
yeah,
they were all there.
yeah,
What they wanted to do, I think, was not to promote one particular person, but they wanted to have large signs where they list everybody and nobody can read it anyway. I think what they did was a better solution. When people walked in, they saw all of the sponsors that they actually could read it. To put up one, a funeral home alone would be advertising. But to list all of their sponsors.
and Spectacle is a discrete event. That's a once-a-year, big-time event. Sam was asking me about every
Every
And,
Not all those
and he didn't push it,
Right.
it was
Right.
taking the program and kind of putting it on a banner. If the board does not feel as comfortable, I'm comfortable telling him that we prefer not to go there. The programs are already there. I do not want to open.
It seems like a lot to monitor, because then what size can the banners be, what kind of things like that. I mean, it just seems like we're adding more kind of the administrative work.
I think I'm getting a sense of where the feeling is on this, so I will take care of it. Okay, but thank you all for entertaining this.
Whenever they perform,
Yeah.
they can do something similar, I think. People walk in,
Yeah.
you see a poster board with all of the sponsors.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what the specific is where they hang
Can
it.
they do that?
It's the specific location. Is that
Well,
I
they-
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if someone's thinking of individual sponsors or just a list of 10 sponsors. Maybe it doesn't make a difference. I mean, it's still commercial advertising if you have one of 10.
It is, and again, I see spectacle as being different than Friday night football
But
games.
yeah,
Spectacle is,
they had over 100 sponsors.
it's a different type of an event. Okay, all right, thank you. I think I've got a response, thank you.
But then, if they ask you, can we continue with our big poster boards, put it next to, they have a tent usually where they sell, let's say they sell Water Ice. Do you see a problem with them having their regular sponsors listed on a poster board next to their tent?
And that's exactly what they're asking to do, and then the question is, if we're talking about equity, how do the cheerleaders do that? How does volleyball do that? How does wrestling do that?
If they were sponsoring an event, they weren't sponsoring the booster club, they were sponsoring
Spectacle.
spectacles.
No, I'm saying in the future,
We should say they
with
were-
their sponsors. They have regular sponsors. I mean, he's talking about their
Yeah.
regular,
Right, they go in the booklets and stuff, or they can go on their website. But to take it to the next step,
okay,
of every time that the band shows up someplace, have a big board, put a big board out, then
right,
you'd be doing it for the cheerleaders, you'd be doing it for
Correct.
football boosters,
Correct.
you'd be doing it for anybody.
correct.
You have to have a whole, and you could basically say, okay, that area over there, you
Put the
put
sponsors-
their sponsor boards there if they want. That's okay, I mean, it's like, as long as people understand, okay, fine, this will be, it's like a bulletin board, instead of just putting these things up on a bulletin board, you can, here's the area where people can stick their sponsor boards,
If you want to go that way, right.
if you want.
Thank you.
Oh,
That was helpful.
all right.
Okay.
We have next, policy work future planning.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you put that link? We have the,
We're trying to plan.
it's the one that I sent to you, as the proposal, 4 months mapped out.
Better than my chicken scratch notes.
We had talked about having more of a longitudinal perspective of policy and admin regs so that we could properly plan and pace ourselves, because there's still, in spite of all the work of this group, there's still a lot of policies and admin regs that are from 2003. So in looking at the policy index and seeing when things were last reviewed, revised, adopted, we tried to then map out, at least through January, the projected policy items to help Ken's office in their planning, also help us in our planning when I meet with the principals, to have them start to vet and provide input so that we are prepared when we get to each one of those meetings. It also helps for the committee members to look at that and kind of see where we are and keep a healthy pace and moving along with the different items. So we did add a December 18th. If you look at the district calendar, there's an October, November, and a January policy meeting. We talked about adding a December policy meeting on the 18th and having it at the high school. The policies that are written there in the ARs reflect things that relate to Student Government Association. And this was actually Sarah's great idea, so I can't take credit for it. And all of those policies really connect to that. So what we'd like to do is have it at the high school, have the SGA there. I already talked to Bob Schultz. He has a meeting tomorrow with the SGA, so he'd like to bring this idea to them so they can begin to prepare and then have input into policies that directly impact them.
Will he have a time following the meeting with the students? Will he have a time, will this take place during the school day or after the school day?
I think he's open to the recommendation of the policy committee when you'd like to have it.
I mean, I think it depends on what the kids have going on. Obviously, I don't want to take
Well, that's
away
just
from.
it, the after-school activities.
Right, so it being the 18th, we looked at the calendar, so it doesn't interfere with midterms or things like that. We looked at, I'm not sure what other what they have going on. So, we're flexible in making sure that we're doing right by them, essentially.
I just want to
Yeah.
get it on the calendar. for
Yeah,
everyone.
so that's what we just looked at the Monday of that, and I spoke to Ben, our SGA rep, just very briefly on the last school board meeting, and just said, we have these policies, kind of we're looking at the SGA ones. If there's policies that the students are interested in, we can put those on there with their opinions, so we can discuss things that they want to talk about if they think that there's some issue, or they want to chat about something. We can do something with them to get them
They are
excited about policy.
They're a very insightful group, I must tell you.
Right. I would imagine they will hold my feet to the fire, which,
I have no doubt.
yeah, so, but yeah, so that was our idea, was to add that December 18th meeting. And I figured we could use it in doing the forum room too, since the forum room is underutilized, we decided, so.
We've left blanks under each date to allow for that flexibility to put things that may carry over that we don't finish,
Yeah.
or something that rises to the surface. Like today, I know Tom has addressed with the principals 907. And so I want to, depending on when we get the feedback from the principals and finish that discussion, might want to add that to October or November. So if you have something you want to add, or something comes up, then we would add that.
9:15,
Right.
parents, booster clubs and parent organizations.
So we can add that to North October,
October.
9:15 there, bro? Yeah.
That would be great.
And that's what I kind of look at September, or at the December means a special meeting, because that is not necessarily part of our normal policy work. So.
And with 9:15, Dr. Miller, you wanted to meet and talk about a tracking form.
I want a tracking form to get information,
So the signatures go by certain.
improvements to the district building and grounds. We have a process, but we don't have a tracking form that will ensure that the appropriate signatures are garnered and timelines. I also have some questions about some language I think needs to be expanded about district employees participating. So it's not major.
What number is that?
915.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
And 907, Tom was looking at. Maybe November would be better. Or if you want to turn it in October. That has to do with
Probably November, I think would be better.
Okay.
Just because, we're really looking, it's the visitors policy.
Okay.
what can we add 907?
907,
November.
November 27th.
907 or no?
907.
Yeah, 9:15 will be on October 907.
That's what we do.
Which one? That's right, 905.
No, I think it's 905.
Oh, you were just one more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay. Got it.
I find myself in January.
All right, so that's our basic plan.
Some of them.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
Where there is a particular policy that actually has a deadline,
Right.
we actually dump that
Yeah.
in the thing so that we don't.
An asterisk.
Yeah,
So
put an
that we don't
asterisk.
push, or just put it in parentheses next to it.
Okay.
What the either deadline or at least the preferred target date, I'll say that.
Okay.
Most of these are gonna have like, we're not violating law, we're not pass that.
Right.
But I'm not gonna get, if we don't fix a policy by X date, we can't get it in our handbooks or something.
Right.
Or we miss a meeting where we want to roll it out. So what I would suggest you do is, for anything that might have anything resembling a deadline that you want to have in by, put those in parentheses, and that way that'll help prioritize.
All right. So if
It
there's
will
like,
also, not only prioritize, but also motivate you to get through them so that they don't just linger from meeting to meeting. Nothing. Oh.
we've been doing all pretty good. I know. All right, so if there's any additions or things, just, we can add on.
Can I ask a somewhat off-topic question, but it deals with so Mr. Spread and I were talking at a meeting once and saying that some of the times we get stuck in meetings where we're trying to correct either grammar things, gender expression stuff, or even things like school buses to school vehicles now. Is there a way that you could do an overarching motion in saying that all the policies get corrected so that we're not having to find them per se, but we can...
Yeah, you can. Here's a couple ways to do it. Given that you have a, well, I don't know, who can make changes to a policy before the meeting? I would just send the copy editing, I'll call them copy editing suggestions ahead of time.
Okay.
And they can get incorporated before the meeting even starts. That would be my suggestion, and that way you don't have an issue. But we already have a policy that says we can make non-substantive changes to a policy, including correcting the title of the policy. It just has to be reported at the meeting. Now, for example, if let's say we give we change Michelle's title for whatever reason, we don't have to go through and get a first reading of, putting a new title before we just do it. Sarah's supposed to say. But for things like periods, commas, and adding a district where what didn't always exist, we can just do that. It should be mentioned in this group that it's happening. So first, the best choice though would be to have everybody send in ahead before the meeting, and that way they'll get paid.
So for instance, we were just looking at ELA and changing it to ELL. And the hard part really is, aside from reading each one individually, you can't do a broad search in Word docs and say, every time you say ELA, then we can do any changes. So,
ELS, you mean ELS?
ELS,
yeah.
And so we were trying to change it.
Yeah,
Or
language
vehicles
learners.
versus buses. And
I think with
There's a
asterisks, I
difference
think
between
you
vehicles and buses. There actually could be a substantive difference.
Okay.
I'm not sure changing the name of a program makes sense.
English language.
There might be a way to do a search function with very, very specific standalone.
But yes, that can be done.
Okay.
That can be done without engaging the policy committee.
Okay.
Where's the word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, the items for review.
One last.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Before the December 18th meeting, somebody should probably sit down, other than probably you.
Yes.
Sit down with the students and kind of make sure they manage their expectations.
Yes, that was my hope, was to
This is
discuss
not an
them.
extension of student government. This is.
No, this is our meeting. Yes, yes.
You don't get an equal.
Right, exactly. But we're getting input. So, okay. All right. On to the business side. We have administrative regulation 246. So we discussed this one at the last meeting. This is with the birthday edible treats. So we had just I cleaned up the language a little bit from what we had, and so we just wanted to bring it up here and make sure everything looked good. The word had gotten out that next year we're going to be going towards a policy of having birthday treats, but not edible ones. I know some of the teachers, most of the teachers, hopefully made the announcement at back to school night, if they've had it so far. So we will see how this year goes, hopefully.
Once this is approved, we'll place it into the student handbooks.
Yeah. So the kids, I mean, the faculty was already aware. They talked about it already to their parents. I think each, individual teacher is probably doing everything slightly differently. I know I personally had different experiences coming from with my kids' teachers. And I also got to be the one to set the example because my son's birthday was the day of back to school. So we sent in our non-edible treat. Slap bracelets are really big with 9-year-olds. So it's better than cupcakes apparently. So that was good. But if does anyone have any, I mean, that you can see what the modifications we made. If there's any other changes, then we'll put that on the October agenda for the legislative meeting.
All the changes are in the green? Right?
Yes.
I just suggest one more change, sorry. That instead of having saying the district supports acknowledging student birthdays, maybe just the district permits. I know of at least one religion that doesn't want to encourage birthdays. And so for that reason, not to say that we're supporting it, but just
Right.
simply permitting it.
Yeah.
Like
Allowed.
Yeah, something down that line would be better.
Yeah, not necessarily.
It's small, but significant.
I agree.
So you want permits?
Sounds good to me.
Yes.
Your slap bracelet, that was, you can have a message that was, you can have like the Angry Birds slap bracelet, etc. Just looking at all that.
We had baseball slap bracelets, and I sent a note to the teacher to say, you may not want the kids to open these during class. So, and apparently, but fourth graders are good, so they took them out for recess and hit their arms as many times as they could with these bracelets. So, you know, but hopefully having a year of transition and having the encouragement and having the kids, maybe they get edible treats sometimes this year, but to see that it's okay to get stickers instead of, you know, a cookie. It's not going to be the end of the world. So, okay. All right, so we made that change for permits versus perfect. All right, anything else? All right.
Actually, sorry, going back to the language. You actually have, you use the phrase non-edible, but we're not using it in the policy.
In the AM,
Or in the,
no birthday food treats.
but we're just saying, by supplying small items such as this, that should we
By
specify
supplying,
non-edible?
yes, small non-edible items.
Yeah, I think
Thank you.
we should definitely add that language if that's what we're trying to get at.
Which paragraph of
The
that?
first one, in between here, small items, supplying small
Non-edible.
non-edible items.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
And just, instead of in honor of Shell's birthday, how about in recognition of Shell's birthday?
In the second paragraph, we say non-food based, does that matter that it says non-edible up there? It's different,
Oh,
different.
Yeah, we
Oh, I
just use
see.
the
Yeah,
same
it
word,
should
you know what I
be
mean?
yeah, one,
Do we care?
which one's better?
What do you think? So here we say non-food based.
It should be the same, it doesn't matter which one.
Other non-edible.
I don't think that, that's not out of the way. Chris?
Right here then, I'll change that back to non-food based,
Right.
since we have that.
I suggested changing honor to recognition of Shell's birthday.
Yeah.
Do you want to put a footnote here that says this section will be effective July 1st, 2019?
Yeah. We should.
That's fine.
Where do you?
Yeah, I mean, because that's in the middle of the second paragraph. Yeah, you're right. Well, in the middle of the second paragraph, it says beginning of the 18th school
sorry.
year.
Never
See that?
mind. Never mind. There. Never mind.
That last sentence in the second paragraph, we can probably strike. I don't think it's redundant.
No,
It's
not.
redundant for a reason.
Yeah.
And that's
No,
what
it's
that
not.
is
That's the one that has to do with like a Halloween party, Valentine's Day party, those are classroom parties and celebrations, that's different.
You
That's
mean
in compliance.
Yeah,
no
just said no
birthday
birthday
food
food
treats
treats
should be
should be
sent
sent.
to school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason we had it in there was to hammer home the point that we're
Yeah.
really talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yes, that's all. That's it. It's to make a point.
We can move on.
Okay. All right. Are we good?
We're good.
All right. Good enough for 246. All right. So that'll be on October.
October.
The-
Policy?
No, the legislative meeting. October 9th.
I got it wrong. It says to do- it says to do 6:05.
Okay, that's 6:05. I didn't get in touch with Resnick about this. 6:05 was the policy that went over to the Finance Committee meeting.
change of the word equalizing.
Oh, yeah, we need to discuss it.
Yeah,
We get
I was not at the finance committee meeting. I did get a note and I didn't speak to Michael
To
about.
change the word equalizing.
Yeah, deceptively, yeah.
The wording of the first sentence of the suggested addition. It says responsibility of equalizing the cost.
And we don't mean.
Let's take the word equalizing out.
Okay,
Replacing it, or no, I'm just taking it out.
okay, what is responsibility?
There are no
This
suggestions.
is 605 in the policy, it's not right. This is the policy.
Might have been the AOR.
I think it must be the AR.
Is it in the AR?
The equalizing it's in the policy.
In the
It's in
policy.
the policy.
It's in the policy, right?
Yeah.
Let me get it.
There it is in green.
Oh, the green part, that's what I was.
Responsibility of equalizing the cost.
Yeah, this section right here. That's what he was referring to.
Okay.
No suggestion fix it.
Yeah, because it sounds like we want to have equal.
Yeah, everybody pays $100.
Yeah. So I think our solicitor needs to just come
What
up
has
with
responsibility?
another way to say that, so that's very correct.
Spreading.
So the board has a responsibility of equalizing the cost of providing a quality education among all district property taxes. You don't really mean everybody's going to be paying the same, it's not equal.
That's not, yeah.
So we would be saying,
Equalizing is the problem.
yeah, that word,
I
yeah.
know, I was trying to think of
Yeah, because we're not trying
where
to,
we have it.
it's actually neat.
No, no, I mean the second sentence.
Let's see. This one, please, there were certain categories within 246 that you have to address. So it's a reiteration, but I'm pretty sure we'll require fields. I think so. Let me just come back to it.
Yeah, sure. I know what we're trying to do.
I know we're trying to do it, but it's not, yeah. Right.
How about, just trying to see what language you use other places. All right, so,
It's property owners.
Why don't we say the board has the responsibility of providing a quality education in a manner, in a manner that is equitable to all the district property owners.
What is it?
The board has the responsibility of providing a quality education in a manner which is equitable to district property owners. Maybe what we should say, which is as equitable as practicable to our property owners.
Which is fair.
Oh, how about that? I like that. Let's say fair.
That's just the board.
Which is,
Fair and equitable?
which is, no, not fair and just fair, which is as fair as, which is as fair as possible to the district property owners.
I love the definition of possible.
Okay. Back up.
That's,
Nah.
Nice. Okay.
It's a
The
responsibility.
board has the responsibility of providing a quality education. The board has the responsibility of funding
Funding, there you go. There, that's it.
a quality education.
yeah, that helps.
Yes, funding.
Funding a quality education in a manner, you can take out in a manner, you can take out in a manner, in as fair as fairly as possible among all district property owners. Provided funding equality, shared as fairly as possible.
Sure.
I just like echo sentence.
No, you're doing great. The board is supportive of funding equality and education.
Shared as fairly as possible among district property owners. Cross out.
Yep.
Because it could be a third.
All of that. Yeah, okay, is that?
Good.
Okay. All right, the board has the responsibility.
Comments right there.
No, you don't need to.
So is there any,
Yeah, there's
what
there.
can I click on?
It's under active, look under, it should be.
I should,
Under consideration, where that
policies and consideration.
It's on the,
I got it, AR under,
Administrative regulation manual.
yeah.
it's in the agenda as well.
Funding like
Oh.
quality education.
Okay.
Shares.
It's under tax levy. 605, yeah.
Yeah, that's the easiest place to find it.
Yes, it does.
Or could you go back to the language that we were trying to correct on? The candidate suggested.
Taxing districts. Can we put them all taxing districts? I'm looking at the, are they like the county, township, are they taxing districts?
They're
Taxing agencies,
They're taxing authorities.
taxing authorities.
What do we say?
I'm just looking at the very last sentence in VAR. It says taxing districts. Within the district, you click it in the aggregate, but all taxing districts within the district. No. So, to be clear, the last sentence.
Oh, okay. We just simply say, no, we should just take that out.
Right,
We should say, tax revenue,
in the aggregate, period, right?
I would just say,
And then
tax
exceeds in the aggregate.
I would take out everything between revenue. I would take out to be collected in the aggregate by all taxing districts within the district.
Right,
And pick it right up with for the year.
yeah, well,
I think
we're not
that's,
there yet. Okay, we're good.
That language is.
We're in the AR, sorry.
I'll go back to the AR.
And then I jumped to the very end of it. It's just a sentence that was, I don't know about everything else. Last sentence of the AR, can you tell it? Count again. You there?
The
Yeah.
last bullet.
The last bullet, yes.
Yeah, what's wrong?
The last
Properties recommended.
2 lines.
consideration.
What's the problem with
I know, I
that?
got that.
policy drop down, I'm just going to consider it because
Someone wants to taxing the districts.
Maybe you don't,
He wants to place it authority.
Oh, taxing authorities, not districts?
well, it should be, no, you
What are you
you
saying?
need to eliminate the potential increase in total revenue to be collected exceeds, just get rid of, I think, the next 10 words or whatever it is. I think that's what Ken said.
Go to the word revenue,
And then delete
increase in total revenue, starting with two.
to.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Like
delete
strike out.
all the way until you get to
Exceed.
within the district, after the word district. You get to that.
Year.
Delete this, section in blue.
Yeah. After the other.
It's not a
You
sense.
just
Right.
up to the, including the word district, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Under assessed. Total tax rate for the year to be appealed.
Mhm.
It's a long sentence.
That's one sentence.
That is one long sentence.
That's why it's a policy. We strive for long sentences.
I believe you, non-lawyer, just wrote that.
We should have a long sentence.
Administration. Dedication of it to be subject to addition shall be consistent with the following guidelines. Do you need that first one? There's something about it.
Mhm.
Well, do you need the first line? Because you have the identification of potential properties to be subject to a district-initiated real estate tax assessment appeal shall be consistent with the
You don't need the first one.
What?
You don't really need the first one.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're doing it,
It's- no.
you're doing it because you want it to be the business administrator's
Straighter doing
responsibility.
it. That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
To the board by the administration.
We're saying it twice, Ken.
Then you simply say the business administrator is responsible for reviewing recent sales. As opposed to may review. Is responsible to review.
Or she may consult with district solicitor. Why are you saying everything two times?
What do you mean?
I'm saying, under the delegation of responsibility, we're describing what's in the guidelines.
Just say who owns it.
So,
It's a board prerogative as to whose job it is and what you're standing with. This is,
That may be under assessed.
you're under proposed
Under
administrative
assessed.
regulation, right?
Hyphenated?
Yes.
This is the proposed
Under
administrative
assessed.
regulation.
Yes.
What's your concern about it?
we're saying the same thing twice.
What?
There's a lot of repeated.
Well, first, we're saying delegation of responsibility. Business administration is non-touching the district solicitor, shall be responsible for identifying the properties, and then in guidelines, business administrator may review listed real estate transactions to identify properties and may be under assessed. Business administrator consult with district solicitor. It's,
Yeah, there's.
don't we just,
some
we just need the
Yeah,
guidelines?
the business administrator is responsible to review business. May consult,
I mean, when conflict of interest is a part of this.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
may consult the district.
Yes, you're correct. Just, you don't need the first
Three.
Well, this third one is pretty
Business
interesting.
administrator may rely on the guidelines.
We don't mention that third case.
You don't need it anyway.
That's kind of weird, I think.
All right. Shall be consistent with the following guideline, and then just put bullet number 4.
Okay. Number 5.
So take all this out.
Well, do you want
Save that
to-
last paragraph, right?
Hold on.
I feel like a lot of that fourth bullet though, you can also delete because we stated it already in the delegation as
All
well.
right, let's review this.
So we're just repeating ourselves too. And just say the guideline is properties recommended by the board need to exceed $10,000. It's basically what we're
That's
trying
all
to get
I
at.
think we need to say.
The other jargon's already been
Take
mentioned
that out,
in above.
take out what you highlighted. Okay, now,
All right.
properties recommended
There we go, okay.
to the board, I'll take out by the business administrator. Take out to be, and to be the subject of a district-initiated real assessment, tax assessment appeal. Stop, delete. To the extent that the business administrator take out in consultation with the delinquent district solicitor. Just go ahead, take out the qualified appraisal firm. We'll take out the comma after business administrator. There. Actually, you can take out the sentence under guidelines, identification of potential properties. Take out that sentence.
This whole sentence?
That is, and it's singular.
Yeah. Guidelines should be,
This is,
All right, let's,
in fact, you can even take out the whole.
you can take out guidelines.
Yeah, the whole heading.
Just
Oh,
add that to the
end
end.
of the- can we take out the bullet too?
You can take out the whole heading.
Cover it up. Here.
Should under assess be hyphenated?
Yeah, I'm not sure,
Yeah. Can we hyphenate under assessed? It's driving me nuts.
We'll look it up.
That's correct.
Google.
Or should it be one word?
That's what I was thinking.
Right.
Wait, what's your first language?
Swiss German.
So you can't.
It's fine.
Probably know better.
Sometimes outsiders have a different.
Have a better
Yeah,
understanding of the rules,
sometimes.
but there are no rules in the English
Oh,
language.
no.
Except I before E, except after me.
They didn't know it was a silent G.
It's-
so I
there should be no space.
taught her grade.
No space.
It's not a good act.
There's one up on this.
It doesn't like it.
It doesn't like it, that's fine. Doesn't say.
Look, Google is not the final arbiter.
Brittany King Sprite, actually.
Space.
Right.
Try that.
They're serious.
The New York Times is.
It likes the hyphen.
It likes the hyphen.
The New York Times is for the New York Times.
I like the hyphen.
Work on the second paragraph. It's
CBS
also
also
under
has
assessed
a
as well.
Oh, thank you. I was going to just ask that.
There you go.
Is that hyphen in it?
You wouldn't put a hyphen between re and assess, so I don't agree on assess. Hey, wait, you put it back?
I did.
You put back the hyphen?
No, there was no.
There was no
hyphen.
hyphen in it.
There was no
There was
hyphen.
nothing.
It wasn't on.
So I was looking at under.
Two words.
Yeah.
You put a hyphen between re and assess?
Reassess
You would put a
would
hyphen.
be a,
Yeah, you would. Only one word. I would put a hyphen between under and assess.
That's what Google told me.
Uh,
Google. Yeah, I don't know.
could have been.
Under assessed looks so weird.
Webster.
Let's put it into German.
This is why nobody comes to policy meetings.
Or winding down.
Okay, the properties recommended to the board shall be under assessed to the extent that the business administrator reasonably believes that the potential increase in total tax revenue for the year to be appealed exceeds $10,000 in the event the appeal is successful. Okay.
Yeah, it's cleaner than it was.
I mean, yeah, I know what it's saying.
Under-assessed. Properties recommended to the board shall be under-assessed to the extent.
Right, it's the properties recommended to the board.
Shall be
It's the
considered
business,
under-
the question really is the business administrator will only, recommend properties that he or she believes is under assessed that to the point, I mean, that's, we know what we're saying, it's just that there's so
Shall
many
be.
thoughts in this.
That are under, potentially under those.
Okay, how about this?
Alright.
Which do I have, or can I just do this? I mean, is there a way for me just to look at it?
Not at the same time. But actually try,
Yeah, you're not, are you in?
Yeah, you can
You're
throw
not
it in
in.
her.
here, here.
Yeah, thanks it.
I want to do this.
If I just save
Yeah, the
it, you
easiest
should be
way.
able to do it now, but it won't show on your computer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the easiest way is for you to come over to her computer, you
And
can.
just do it on her. That's true.
Let's do this one.
You not her. You didn't want to start calling. Oh, sorry.
And you can talk about your response. Look at the next
You have to
policy.
go to the, yeah. It's a little-
I still don't like the first line, or the line that we did on the policy
On
part.
the other one.
No, the barely,
You go back.
barely as possible.
Is this the last agenda item?
Probably not. What else do we have? Oh, before Ava's here.
Yeah, why don't we do that while?
Okay, I know. Sorry, Ava.
It's okay, you know. It's interesting to be here and hear what you guys are talking.
You're lying now.
No, I'm not lying.
All right, we will come back to 605. Let's talk about 121, 231. So this was, so obviously, hey, we don't have it on here. We had some things for second reading on the agenda, for the October legislative agenda. It was, is it 215, right? And, yeah, they're not on the agenda. There was no changes to it since the last time we talked about it. It was the, let's see, everything right here. Now that I'm talking about this. It was the promotion and retention policy. So the last legislative meeting, we had the policy and the AR at the same time. We passed the AR, and even though it's usually it's standard procedure, we normally wait to pass the AR on the second reading. But there wasn't any huge changes to 215 that we felt needed to be. So 215 will be on the agenda for second reading and approval unless there's any objection to that or changes in the interim. The other policy that will be on second reading is the new policy 121. This is the policy that's combining 121, 121.1, and 231. This is all the field trips, foreign travel, all that stuff is, and we're combining it into just a new 121, which we remember Ava's been here a couple of times. So there is an administrative regulation to correspond with our new policy. We currently have two regulations, 121 and 231. There's not an AR for 121.1. So we're going to, just like we're replacing the entire the three policies into one, or combining them, we'll be doing the same for the administrative regulation. So
The educational travel request form, the principals had a few things that they would just like to tweak a couple of the words. So can we just repost at the next legislative meeting that educational travel request form with the changes? Yeah.
okay. The form, do we need to approve it in a board meeting? It's not, I wouldn't think so. I think just would be the policy committee could just
Correct.
take a look at it. Okay, so we'll look at the form of the 10:30 policy committee meeting.
That's
We'll
the
get the-
field trip form, correct?
Yeah,
No,
No,
the educational travel request form. That's the one when parents say, like, I'm going to go to Disney World, can I have?
Is that this one, the
Educational
non-school?
travel request form,
let me see.
Oh, I can't.
ed travel request form, not field trip form.
Hadn't we recently updated that one as well?
We just got it last month. We put it on letterhead and made it look nice and everything, but there's a couple wordsmithing changes.
Okay. Is that,
That's the form, so we can change
It's
that.
this form.
We can change that.
yeah, it's this form. I've seen it. Yeah.
That's the field,
This one.
that's the field trip form,
So-
called field trip request form.
educational travel request form.
So that's a
This
different
is
one.
a
Is that-
admin
yeah.
reg 204, attachment C.
Oh,
okay.
204, there we go.
204, attachment C.
That's what they are. All right, so we will bring that, you said we're going to attachment C for 204. That's going to, we'll see that at 10:30. Policy 10:30, okay. All right, so for 121, 231, this AR. That's got it. So there's a form that can go along with that. All right. Ava, is there anything that you want to address on this?
Well, what you're looking at is the administrative regulations that go along with, hold on, I'm sorry, my screen, it just doing funny things. I think we discussed the policy already, and so this is so it has been reviewed, and I don't know if you have any questions. I think it is fairly accurate, but broadly written so that it doesn't need to be looked at again.
Oh, I see.
Can I, from the principals meeting, Ava, just the one thing for number 2, guidelines. Can we use the word intra-district just to have more clarity, because they started to give more examples than just going like to the planetarium. So they were saying if there's anything intra-district, do they have to fill out the field trip request form?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They do. Anything that isn't centrally planned, they will not need to have a student permission form to travel from one place to another within the district, but they do need to fill out the field trip form, because how else would we know that they're going?
With the parental like notification form.
Parental notification for,
Like the inter-office or
so parental notification for intra-district trips, we don't need separate permission for every time we go to Robbins Park. or anything.
no, it's just to let parents know, because sometimes it's like your kid comes home and said they went to the planetarium that day and you had no idea that they were leaving campus. Yeah.
So there should be something that goes out from the school saying on these days when you teacher your child will be going to.
Okay. Do we want a separate form for that? Since we don't have to have something coming back,
There will be a lot of them.
there would be a lot of them.
Now we could do there could be a fill this out one time only with all of the dates. Like this is our new, and you'll see a copy of it. It's the hard copy of our parent permission form.
Right.
I think just giving notice to parents that on these dates your student will be traveling to the planetarium or Robbins Park is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Any trip outside the district would require this.
Right.
So intra-district then doesn't require.
It does if, so for example, the high school social studies students go to one of the elementary schools before their Washington, D.C. trip to help them learn more about the resources in Washington, D.C. I still believe that parents of the high school students need to fill this form out. Because that's not a regularly sponsored trip.
I guess that's the part that they're getting confused.
So is it is it just planetarium and Robbins Park? Is that what we're talking about?
Those are the, well, there's music in our schools trips. I don't think parents need to sign off on that when we go, for example, when the 5th grade goes to, or like graduation, but they still need to use the field trip form so that transportation knows what's happening.
We need to really meet with the top of the principals again, because at the principal meeting just prior to this, there was a different understanding of that.
Of which part?
That if it was in district, they did not have to fill out a form. I explained there had to be some way to
There has
coordinate
to be a form.
transportation.
There has to be a form. And they
It
can
may not be that, but maybe
Create an easy.
We're talking about
An easy form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about two different things.
Right.
This is a parent permission form for students to travel, so that's not the form. The submitting the form online for students to go needs to be still done. That still has to happen, in my opinion, because we need to know what students are traveling and when they're doing it, even if it's intra-district.
Okay, and that's the clarification I think that needs to be messaged.
The conversation we had in summer with the principals is, do students need to fill this form out, and it would be burdensome for them to do so.
Correct.
It was never around the,
But their
submission.
interpretation, I believe, am I inaccurate, Michelle? Their interpretation was, God bless you, if it's completely within the district, there would be no need to file a form.
With the October deadline, et cetera.
That sounds like an internal discussion.
I think so, yes, because there's some
But it doesn't
confusion.
require any clarification here then? As we're doing this properly.
From the committee?
All right.
I don't understand.
I guess like Dr. Wheeler was saying, there was confusion as to number 2, when we felt form number 1. So it could be an internal, but it may warrant another bullet point here.
For number 2,
Just to
the
add.
number 2 is referencing this form, that if you're going from the planetarium from your elementary school to the planetarium, the parent does not have to fill out a field permission form for the
Correct.
times that they go.
And parents should be notified at least 1 week in advance of such a trip, correct?
So
But
the
I still-
question, how?
I still-
Question rose about transportation, reserving buses, etc.
So for the internal, like every single grade level goes to the planetarium. We do not need to fill out a separate Google form for that. However, if a group of students is traveling from the high school to the elementary school to talk about Washington DC, I believe a Google form does need to be filled out so that everybody is aware of that movement, because that's a very specific thing. So if we need to go back, and I don't know if we, according to this policy, it's laid out there that Google form needs to be submitted, but it is broad.
And do we have that form? Is there a form that is currently being used?
It's
Is it a
an
Google form?
online submission of field trips.
Okay. And they're only doing that for the non-Robbins Park, non-planetarium?
Exactly. Which is the bulk of our field trips.
Right, the most of, our kids are usually around because that's where they're going to Robbins Park.
And the thing is, when I said broad, it says the timeline for student travel submission will be determined. So currently, we have 2 different submission dates. There's some things you're tweaking as we move that forward. Required procedure for trip sponsors under number 1. We can hash that out with the building principals, get their input again. It doesn't need to change the language here.
Right.
Could we put where it says does not constitute a field trip? Would it be does not warrant a field trip form?
Right.
Which actually makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. I don't think that we have to.
Yeah, that's an internal. I think, Michelle, I think that goes under number required procedures for trip sponsors. The timeline for student will be determined by the school district. I think that we can do that. That's would go under there, and that can still be hashed out without needing to.
Just do another.
Mhm.
Ms. Clegg? Last week, Jan had mentioned that they made a small change to the field trip permission form, and we were going to mention it.
Okay.
That's the one I thought you were talking about before the summit.
I don't know what the small change was.
Yeah, there's an update on the new field trip form. Is there a lunch required for this trip? And then teachers and parents can click and they will see this form, which is a request for a paper bag lunch. If you are a free and reduced student, you automatically will get a paper bag lunch, but parents can also order them. So you don't have to pack your lunch, you can if you order it.
The other question was clarification of a local institution versus another institution. Local just means
Within district.
in district.
Intra-district.
Can you just say in district?
in
Where is
district.
that wording, Michelle?
After number 9, principals are asking local, what does that mean? versus
Yeah, it's
other?
defined in the thing, but I think that if we just, you don't have to look for a definition if it just says intra-district or in-district. We know what that means then.
And then we have minimum of 3, those are the minimums, because they were saying that, like for instance, if you go to, what was I saying, Smithsonian or something.
A science museum where the institution dictates the percentage, the ratios of chaperones.
Okay.
So if we list ours as a minimum number, that should help.
Yes.
So
Instead of local, we were going to put
local was going to become in district.
district institution.
What is an in-district institution? But there's no such thing. How about just in?
In-district.
In district.
Yeah.
The less wording we are, the better.
Yeah. Then minimums, I guess, we should somewhere just put minimum.
Wait a minute, hold on a minute. I'm sorry. I think local institution is if you're going to, because the thing
Oh,
is, you
like
don't
the
need
library.
three chaperones. Yeah, if you're going to the Upper Dublin Public Library or something that's local.
For
but-
Washington
Yeah,
State.
because we're not sending chaperones for in-district travel. The people who go on the bus to the planetarium are the teacher and her class.
In district boundaries.
So this is for out-of-district travel, so only the right-hand column, out-of-district institutions, we could eliminate the whole local column.
Well, except like when we go to the Upper Dublin Public Library or the fire station, or we do
Why
go.
don't you say within the township and outside the township? Within Upper Dublin Township.
Yeah. And that's actually how it's defined in number 9, because the term local is used to refer to Upper Dublin Township.
There it is right there.
Because I read it because I was wondering, what does local mean?
And then what is the minimum?
Yeah, where was the minimum for the feedback from the principals?
Well, they were saying sometimes when you go to a certain field trip, they require a certain ratio, and it might be a higher ratio than that one. So it said, that these are the minimum, this is what you have, this is the
So
minimum,
this
and always have
is
more.
what we're requiring, that you can always have more.
Yeah.
So,
Before the word ratios in number 9.
Put minimum.
Put the word minimum before ratios in number 9.
in the following
Yeah,
minimum.
there, and then you
In
don't.
general, the
Yeah.
following minimum ratios.
Yeah.
It should say one minimum.
Oh, whoops, yeah.
And then it should be adults and students.
Adults,
You can use the students.
Except that you've done
Pupils.
It should be one of them. But that's, yeah, I think we can do that later.
Number 7 right above this needs to be cleaned up a little bit. I understand. I think all we need to do is just change that. If you go up just a
Do
little
we
bit.
need this part because we said here it's in Upper Dublin Township? Or do we say it in other places?
You don't need it. You don't need it. You can take it out.
Yeah, you're right there. We're missing, it's like a hanging
Yeah, yeah.
sentence there. Number
Number
7.
7, the grammar. I think
Yeah. Or at least the capital. There's a big comma and a lowercase.
Well, I think after the participate.
A field trip should be a comma. After, then I believe it should be appropriate to do comma.
And then
And
The
then
teacher.
lowercase t.
lowercase.
I'm sorry, mine's
I
right
think
section.
you're right
There,
there.
you're right there. Where you should.
Comma, and then lowercase t.
I'm just thinking that we change pupils to students, right?
Volunteer card.
Ken, did you insert the little question under transportation, number 4? I click on it, it says, is this applicable? I don't know what that. Under transportation.
Number 4.
Transportation guidelines for student travel.
District transportation is available.
Right there, I don't know where that.
Students may not travel in private vehicles.
The student transportation is not available or not applicable.
But number you want to
I don't know what, you said number 4, what do you want it to say?
I just questioned that.
There's a
I don't know
note
who
here.
wrote that. It says, is this applicable? I don't know who wrote that.
Okay.
under what category, number 4?
Transportation.
Transportation guidelines for student travel, number 4.
As related to allocation of trip,
Yep.
1 bus equals 1 trip.
Oh, I see what you're saying. People get the wrong 4. I don't know, is that the way you do things?
No.
I take it out.
Yeah, I
Take
don't
it
know how
out.
that even got in there.
So all of number 4.
Yes, 1 field trip, doesn't matter how many buses, it's still just 1 field trip.
Who raised that question? Bookies don't need it. Last trace.
Good. It is. And the other last thing that probably bears comment is number 5 under guidelines, which is the approved essential curriculum are funded by the district. So for example, our Robbins Park and planetarium trips are funded by the district.
Number 5 under which section?
Under the general guidelines.
Forget it, yeah. Essential curricular trips.
So those are the ones that are centrally organized through the curriculum department. For the most part, we have not been supporting trips outside of that. We have a whole budgetary conversation, but that still, this administrative regulation allows us to do so as we move forward.
All right, so,
Just to clarify, so with the PTOs, I think that's been a repeated question,
yeah.
right, as to who funds what, and in particular with Robbins Park.
Robbins Park, we, is district funded.
We've been paying for that. The PTO hasn't paid for that for
Yeah.
quite some time.
Right. The PTO pays for just,
Class trips, if you want to go to the zoo.
right,
There's
other
no
field
essential-
trips.
Right, so there's no essential reason why you have to go to the zoo to learn our curriculum. It's a nice to have, but it's not essential to our.
So does it go outside, so for the approved essential curricular trips, I mean, do we pay for things outside of the in-district trips?
We do sometimes, so for example, we had a student who made it to, and we go back to this, we revisit this a number of times, which is why it's a little more broadly written. If a student wins a competition,
Right.
for example, we had a student who went to a national level competition in music, and we paid for that student's trips.
But is that an essential curricular trip, or does that fall in the second paragraph?
I think it falls in the
Second sentence.
second sentence. So there are times where we do support curriculum, and that will be one of them.
Yeah, no, my thought is just, if you wanted to change it, because who determines what's the essential curricular trips? Is it you and your department?
For the most part, I think it is, yeah.
Okay. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, if we're doing any field trips that are, I mean, it's within, the in-district trips are funded by the school district, right? Okay.
That's
So-
very clear, like, we're going to Robbins Park, we're going to the planetarium, that's part of our,
Okay,
written into our curriculum documents.
great, so that should be, do we have it in there, just, whereas in-district travel is, or in-township, whatever we're calling, you know?
Well, and I think that's under approved essential curricular trips.
Okay, and then do we go beyond that for the essential curricular trips? Because I feel like the second sentence gives us other travel, such as will be funded at the discretion. So I'm just wondering if we can be more specific up front, or you want that wiggle room of essential curricular trips to include not just the in-township ones, but other ones at your discretion.
Yeah, so it could be like, I was thinking about this, like, could an argument, if there were a good reason, that maybe I can't think of right now, for somebody to, as part of their curriculum, for example, I guess I could point to special ed, students who are transitioning to jobs or going on regular trips to George's, for example, we fund that because that's essential to their curriculum.
Right.
There are probably others, and others may come up as we move forward.
Number 10, under supervision and chaperone guidelines, our principal had a question. It had the circumstances, like, these are circumstances when a parent may accompany their child during student travel. They just want to drive their child so they're not going to stay. So that shouldn't even be acceptable. Under there, or a provision for that under there. He gave the example, student gets bus sick. So parents said, can I just drive him, and I'll drop him off there and then pick him up, so he doesn't ride the bus because he's sick. That's not an IEP or a service agreement. Are there provisions for a parent to do that, or we just say no?
Well, I think it makes sense in the situation you gave, is that there should be some discretion given to the building principal or superintendent.
There was a little more to that particular
Yeah.
situation that we don't really have to get into
Okay.
right now, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, do we want to have the flexibility, you know, of the district to be able to say yes? I mean, we always have
Or
that
just say
flexibility.
no.
Or to say no, right?
So flexibility would be,
Okay. Yeah, unless acting as an authorized chaperone, parents, guardians may not accompany their child during student travel unless required by the child's IEP or service agreement. I think we have another section, or if they're providing a service that otherwise would be provided by a school nurse. So I think we just have another line in there, or, you know.
About, unless acting as authorized chaperone, parents or guardians must be approved by the principal to attend student travel. Reasons for such approval would be if required by a
yes,
child's
that's
IEP.
very good.
Must be.
And to the principal's point, it just simply says during student travel. It doesn't say participation in the field trip. So yes, you may transport your child there if they get car sick, but you're not staying for the trip as a means to.
Okay. So it's parents, guardians may not accompany their child during student travel without written permission of the principal. Period. Period. But you have a not, and that not, you have the T struck off. That should still stand.
I know.
Unchanged then.
Yeah.
Do that next. That's fine. Then after the period, it's reasons why a principal would permit a parent, guardian to accompany their child would include required by, you got the last.
And say if.
Instead of unless.
That, you know what, I think that would include a requirement of the child's IEP or service agreement. They got a requirement.
Requiring by. Intent of. The child's IEP. A service.
Yeah, or if the parent guardian is providing a service.
Or if a parent.
The parent,
Maybe the,
it would be the parent or guardian. Is, or should be is.
Just have a quick note in regard to some of the cross-references. So we actually cross-referenced AR 534 and number 6 on one of these, but it's not mentioned on the bottom. So I think if we can go around and clear up maybe some of the cross-references, that would be duly noted. And I have a question on number 2 under the supervision chaperone guidelines. And Tom, this is going to be one for you. So it talks about the volunteer applications and being issued a volunteer card. Do we still issue the cards?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
But I'm wondering, are we going to continue, or are we just asking, are we doing the application and just clearances rather than simply noting the card? And I guess in the spirit of it, are we requiring the card that they need to have the card versus just saying that we've cleared them to be a volunteer?
They receive a card, but they also, the name goes into a database that's accessible by administration. So it is a cross-check that they can produce a card showing that they have been approved, but also the administration and secretaries in the buildings are to go into that database and check to make sure it's applicable. Yeah.
This is just a curiosity question. So I think that started roughly about 5 years ago, and we're coming up to the cusp. Are we at the point of where we're starting the renewals for all this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, yeah. Contacting by email, and we're up to over 1,600 volunteers in the district.
Okay. Wow.
So, 1,600. So more are coming in as well. So as new students are coming on and new volunteers are applying. So we were just talking last week, as a matter of fact, that you write those volunteers that have or background checks are coming up on that 5-year limit, reaching out to them and giving them proper notice that they need to come in and update those clearances or be removed from the file. And the ID card also does have an expiration date on it as well. So even if they try to use the ID card, there's an expiration date that matches their background checks.
Thank you.
Will you send me a bullet or two on that, and then my next community update us?
Yeah. But I was going to add, actually, Brooke, in the section of supervision and chaperones guidelines, that we probably want to include in number 2, that they need a tier 1 volunteer card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we issued a tier 1 to chaperone.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Tier 1 volunteer card, yeah, that's good.
And should we do a cross-reference to what tier 1 means?
Probably no.
Tier 1 simply means that they can supervise the children. Tier 2s cannot.
Which is why that makes sense for a chaperone.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I meant, for a little reference, to what tier 1 means, like a link in the word. What do you think?
I just think there's a lot of cross-references in this regulation that we should be adding some of those cross-references in there. Beyond the one that I noted, I think there's some others as well. Maybe 10 or someone else could add something to be done.
If you could let me know what time I can add those.
All right. Do we have more changes to this one, or are we good for?
Just adding cross references to.
Yes, correct. Okay. So if we're good with this, and we'll put this on for approval on 10-9, and we'll also have the second reading of 121.
It'd be good to see a cleaned up version.
Yes.
Because this is.
Yes, there's a approval. Pretty. 605, I know. Let's go back.
But what about the non-school sponsored trip form? That was, boy, that was complicated. I mean, I don't know. It's on here, I just,
The complication with it, from my point of view, is simply for staff to understand. And I think the last time we were here,
it's a new form.
it's not only, it actually covers not just staff offering non-district sponsored trips in their capacity as teachers, but also in their capacity as coaches of non-school district teams. And so I wonder when would be an opportunity to communicate that to staff, because that is very complex, and I'm sure that they don't understand that yet.
Yeah, I gave it as an FYI to principals just to review, but I said that this new form is brand new to this committee today.
Okay.
It is, I'm also thinking that the likelihood that the district, through the superintendent's office, approves a non-district sponsored trip, Dr. Wheeler, is relatively low.
Wait, we're not approving it.
Well, it says according to that,
It does not imply that the district endorses, approves, or is affiliated in any way.
but in the, well, then let's go back to.
This is letting us,
Keeping track of
making
it.
us aware.
This is a report, this is a disclosure form, this is not an approval form. This is
There's
simply a
something in the
disclosure.
language of the AR though that it needs to go. Let me just-
Change the wording.
That's a
Disclosure
quote,
here?
No, it's a
The
disclosure.
title?
I like that.
Yeah, change it to required disclosure
Okay.
form.
Disclosure
Yeah,
form,
that's
that's better.
That puts it on some non-sponsored people.
So it's the use of the district's name, logo, or criminal endorsement is prohibited without prior permission of the superintendent.
Yeah.
Doesn't that imply that there is prior permission from the superintendent? And then does that simply make it an in-district trip
I'd
then?
say use of the district's name, logo, or approval endorsement is prohibited.
Okay, that makes it
Period.
more clear. That's where I saw that language. It's
Yeah.
not in the policy.
There you go. All right, good.
So principals are going to share this with faculty? Do you tend to go to faculty meetings?
I only know if I'm invited to do so for a specific reason. So all of the communication around field trips has come through my office and then to staff through the building principal.
Okay, this would tend to be high school and perhaps middle.
There could be coaches and all sorts of things.
But that's all high school, so perhaps a follow-up with Bob and Jill maybe? Okay.
All right, you got 8 minutes. Let's go to 6:05. We were last in the administrative regulation.
Should go back to the policy and make sure that one sentence.
I know, I don't like that sentence, that policy 605 sentence.
Are we going back to 605?
Yeah, we weren't done.
We should make sure we do the policy
Okay,
first.
let me look at the policy first. So I mean, look, if you guys are fine with it, then, you know, I don't love
Let's
the.
see where we're at with
Okay.
it.
It's that sentence that has some red on it now, that we, I just think,
Yeah.
it's the board has the responsibility of funding a quality education shared as fairly as possible among all of the district's property owners. I don't know, I don't love the, I guess the phrase shared spot as fairly as possible. But again, this is, all right. I mean, what I prefer is what I just put in, like the board has a responsibility of funding a quality education equitably allotted among all district property owners. I don't know, there's just.
Then you go back to
Equitably
equitably and then.
What?
Portion.
Equitably apportioned.
Yes, equitably apportioned.
Portion is better.
Apportioned, thank you. Yes,
That sounds.
Talk with Michael. That's fine, but just talk to.
I'll talk to Michael, make sure he
That was the
understands.
word
That was
you
the-
changed it to.
Yeah, and it was an equalizing, I think, that doesn't, yeah, so, yeah, equitably
Proportionate.
apportioned.
Apportion.
I'll make sure he's good with that.
So this is going for a first?
That's going for a first. Okay,
So
that's the
the
policy.
point of having a conversation in it first.
Yeah, and then,
So first reading for that?
yeah, first reading for 605, and then the AR, and Ken was making some changes, which is why we ended up moving on while he was, right? That was 605?
And if you go back to the AR,
The language
find
of
it.
C.
Oh, it's right, it doesn't show because it's first.
Actually changed the language.
Business administrator shall recommend properties for appeal where the potential increase in
I've never
judgment.
done it.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay,
Yeah, I didn't look at it, yeah, I think it's
that's
good.
good,
job,
that's
Dan.
good, good job. Ken. It's that last sentence that we were,
So is that ready for
yeah, but, so
work
do,
back to? Have public.
yeah, you're right, so. Well, we don't need to have 605 on anyway, right, because we're still doing the first reading of 605. So 605 will come back and we'll put them together and hopefully have them on the legislative meeting together in November for a second reading and stuff. So all we have right now is 605 on for 10-9 for first reading. So the agenda for a legislative meeting will have 2 second readings, 215, which is promotion or retention, a second reading of 121, which is field trips, repealing 121.1 and 231. And then we will have administrative regulation 246, as well as first reading policy 605, and the AR for 121. Repealing the other 2 ARs. All right, okay. All right.
And the 2 attachments?
And yes, and the attachments will be on there. Great. Yes, and we have a community member today. Do you have any community input?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
I'm just absorbing it all.
That's great, yeah.
To get rid of the details.
We're just so excited to have them.
Great.
No, it's interesting. It's
Yeah,
not-
so, and you are, and community is always afforded an opportunity for input at the end of the committee meeting. So, since we
Plus, you get
have
the minutes
no,
that way if you get in the minutes if you say something.
yeah,
Yeah.
Woohoo. Get credit.
Well, you did technically say something.
right, Bob did. Yeah, so he decided he had no comment. All right, so with that, we're adjourned. We will be back here on Monday, October 30th. Thanks.